This morning I'm delighted to welcome our second keynote speaker, Mr. John Lonergan. For those of you who have never heard John speak before, you are in for a treat. And for those who have heard John speak before, as I have, you're in for a treat as well. I think that was a common theme when people knew you were coming, John. And I suppose in education, there's three words we use a lot. And for me, John, through your work as former governor in Mountjoy and as an author and as a speaker, we talk a lot about authenticity. But I think if you could define authenticity, John, you're the definition of it and what you bring to all of your presentations. Impact as well, I know, because you spend a lot of time speaking to young people. And I know from having you in Marino speaking to our students, the impact that you had on them when they went out on placement, in particular when they were working in schools serving communities of disadvantage. That impact was huge. And finally, we talk a lot about curiosity. And I'm really curious to hear what you have to say about our theme. And I think everybody else is as well. So nobody wants to hear me talk, they want to hear you talk. So John, thank you for joining us.
First of all, thanks very much for the invitation. And I really mean this now. I always feel honoured when I'm invited to speak at conferences where education and teachers are involved. Why? Because I have education up on the very top. I would argue with anybody, and I often do as well, that is by far and away our most important area of life is education and teaching, because everything else is dependent upon that. And that's where I'm coming from. I just believe in the power of education. I will talk later on maybe a little bit about the sort of theme that I'm supposed to talk about, but I talk about lots of things that I'm not supposed to talk about, because I get carried away really in a way. But the first thing anyways is just to say that the job, I keep saying to people regularly, the success stories, our greatest success story is our education system. I've no hesitation in saying that. And it seldom, if ever, gets that type of recognition. And I suppose nowadays I'm sort of saying that as a people and as a society and as a community, we're not Ireland, we're not good at gratitude. I don't know what it is. We just can't say, Jesus, it's good, it's brilliant. Like even if it's the weather, it's a lovely day, but will it last? Like we just can't be grateful for things. And I consistently say, that we should be so grateful. Because I'm old enough, you see, I was born in the late 40s and I grew up in the 50s in Ireland, in rural Ireland. And so I know what progress we have made because I've lived through it, and that's an amazing experience. And back to our education system, I saw and experienced most of my generation growing up, most of them immigrated. None of them went to third level. Few of them went to second level. And it was the norm. And the generation before me, my parents, 99% of people left at primary level. And their claim to fame was that they passed the primary cert, the old primary cert. And that was their claim to fame in that sense. So just imagine living through what has happened since. And it's not just the first thing I suppose is the change in the whole approach, cultural change. And I know from my life in working in prison how difficult that is. I just want to reassure you, and especially the people here that are out doing all this sort of promotion, this sort of change and that, how difficult and frustrating it can be. Because human change is very slow. And very difficult and very challenging. But to think and to be able to measure what happened, we just take primary education, on its own. I hadn't been to a primary school for about 45 years from when I left until I went back again. And I just couldn't believe the changes that had taken place in that, and that's 12 or 14 years ago. And I'm sure more and more change has happened since. When I was a child growing up, primary education, going to primary school was similar to going to a concentration camp. It's hard to believe that now, but it was. And the belief was, look, be seen and not heard. So you weren't encouraged to ask questions. You weren't encouraged to do anything other than to sit, don the veil, and sing sheaves and shut up. And that's the way, and we were terrified, and in the sense, and so there was no enjoyment in it. And now you go into primary schools, and what do you see, and what do you experience? An amazing atmosphere. The relationship between the children and the teacher is unbelievable. Healthy, positive, relaxing, normal. I live close to 2 primary schools in Dublin. I live in Kilmacud. We have a boys' primary school and a girls' primary school almost within 100 metres, 200 metres of each other. So there's loads of kids up and down every morning and every evening going and coming from school. I've over the last 10, 15 years, I don't think I've ever seen one child upset going to school in the morning, which is fascinating to see little kids going off, thrilled with themselves, with their little bags, and they're so delighted to be going to school. That's an amazing change, and credit for that goes down to the people who have led all that, and it's mainly teachers and the other planners in the Department of Education, and that progress. And that's fantastic to have achieved that. And as I said, without us as a society ever really realising and being grateful for how significant that change is. Our second level education system, I grew up when it wasn't available to most people, because you had to pay, and most people couldn't pay. So most people were deprived of second level education. That's hard to believe in 2024, but that's what happened. That was the truth. And in the south here of Ireland, I know we have people from the north as well, but from the south here, I'm always praising Donogh O'Malley, because Donogh O'Malley in 1967, 68, 67, he got this wonderful idea of an impulse, really, that we should have free second level education in the Republic of Ireland. And he made that decision without consulting anybody. And that has been a revolutionary decision. So we'll never be able to measure what that has done in terms of access, of change, of equality. We're talking later on, I'll be hoping to talk a little bit about still the challenges out there. But we have to record tremendous progress in terms of equality, because access to education is the greatest leveller. If you have access to education, which we have now, there are other challenges, but once you have access to it, well, then that's what equality really means in practical terms. And so to have that situation ever since 1967 onwards is just amazing. And then just looking at our third level, and again we take it for granted. Almost any part of Ireland now, there's a third level institute available, almost at your doorstep. The second wonderful thing is that you can go to third level at any age. Again, we take that for granted. Other countries, even neighbouring countries, say, "Jeez, it's amazing what you can do, and it's affordable." So I suppose I really wanted to say that, take a bow. It's so important sometimes just to be told, I think anyway, to be told, look, you've done amazing stuff. That journey has been an amazing journey of progress. You've made massive changes to people. You can never measure it, ever. It'll never be measured. And I'm not sure there's any need to measure it, because we know the difference it had made. We can see it. And just remember, as I said, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but particularly that period where there was mass immigration from Ireland, especially rural Ireland. But remember, most young men, as young as 15, some as young as 14, and girls, left Ireland with very basic education. Could you just imagine what life was for them? Going off into hostile environments across the water as well. Just imagine how ill-prepared they were to go out into that world, and they did, and they survived. And the other thing that I always say, not only did they survive, but they were so generous as well. Something else we forget. Many of them went to England, America, but mainly to England. But they worked hard at low-rate jobs, but they were very generous in sending home money to their families to support younger members of their families. Well, I think we should never forget that. that contribution that those poor misfortunes did. They were never given a chance themselves, but they were determined to give their younger siblings the opportunity and the support, and their parents. And honestly, I'm a grandparent myself at this stage, and I'd say some things they're in tremendous progress made. Well, there's always little stings in the tail, and one of them, the sting in the tail for me, is that people have gone awful selfish. And I'm afraid a lot of young people are in that category, in terms of, it's me. Very little about, what about others? What about thinking about others? Life cannot be about myself. I bet you know that. And the job you're doing brings you into that. Because I bet most of the satisfaction you get is what you give to others. The impact you have on other people. And so it's very important to remember. I always say we must always pay attention to where we came from. We must be always proud of our roots. We must always remember others, because others depend a lot on us. So I just want to say that. I want to say to you as well, take no notice of the old criticism you get, because you get more than your fair share. You know the old cynics stand, look at the holidays, you're not off again, are you? Oh, Jesus. And you finished at 3 o'clock. Oh, Jesus, I'd love to have a job like that. And that sort of old rubbish. And media. I still get angry when I hear people on the media criticising and that old sort of cheap comments and cuts. And I always say to myself, talking to myself in the car, I'd say, where did you come from? Mars? Were you in our educational system at all? Did someone not bring you to where you are today? Every single one of us are totally dependent, and so should be totally grateful to the teachers in our lives. They made us who we are. They had a massive impact. So we must never forget that. So it's just important, I think, to say that, and for you to communicate that to people down along the line, especially at the coalface. The ones that, it's a tough job, by the way. Just want to tell you that. Because if you're doing it, sometimes you don't realise it's tough. You're saying, No, to be a great teacher, my God, it takes some doing. I emphasise, to be a great teacher, because that is really a vocation. That is really a love of what you're doing. And you can see that, by the way. You can sense it. The person who loves what they're doing. And you can imagine the environment that they create with that love of whatever it is. And that's what. But it's tough. There's no other job. You have 25 or whatever many, 30 in some cases, 35 in other cases, 35 sets of eyes staring at you, day in, day out, watching your every move. I have a daughter, a teacher for many years now, but when she started off first, she couldn't understand the attention. She'd go in the morning and said, "You washed your hair this morning, Miss Lonergan?" I said, "No, I didn't." She said, "You did." "Where's your ring this morning?" "What ring?" "Some old ring she had. She hadn't it on some morning." I said, I remember her first year down in Lonergan, we live near Lonergan Shopping Centre, and she was going to clothes shops. And she was only a week or two teaching, and she looked out one day, and here was 3 little first years looking in the door at her. She said, "Jesus, I can't even go into the shop with him." But we must turn that around the other way and to say, what a responsibility. What a responsibility. And what a privilege that here's little tiny 12 or 13-year-olds absolutely adoring you, looking up at you. You are their role model. You are the person they most admire. That's amazing. And that's true right across the spectrum. It's amazing. It's fabulous. But it's pressure. You see, it is pressure. Because you can't do it, you know. You see, they see you, to see which road rage. Jesus, miss, you are very excited down at the traffic lights. Yeah. You see, but you know that pressure. That I have to watch everything I say. I have to watch everything I do. And I'm just saying that to you today because it's so important that that's recognised. It's a tough job. Take no notice. The only people that know what it's like to go into a class day in, day out are people who have done it. In other words, fellow teachers. No one else knows them. They haven't a clue, actually. It's tough. And not alone just to keep their attention, but to excite them and to interest them and to motivate them. So that takes a lot of. So it's just to feel that you are. And my final little stuff on that is that as a society, when I was growing up, there were two professions that were really looked up to. And I'm sure many of you are on the same thing, but certainly in my time, believe it, there were teachers, because they were regarded as, different, and they were teachers and they were up on a pedestal, and nurses, caring and educating. And isn't it fascinating that in 2024 we have a massive shortage of both? I think we get what we deserve. Because we didn't mind our nurses, and we didn't mind our teachers, and we didn't look after them and put them up where they should be as one of our most important, crucial professions. There's miserable pay for long, long periods of time, miserable working conditions. And then we got the Celtic Tiger, and people said, wow, sure, who would be working in the public service anyway? Old boring jobs. You see, I used to get so annoyed over that. So annoyed. Just forgetting the people. It was like when COVID came. Do you remember COVID? And frontline workers. Just they arrived from Mars, by the way. They were never there before, those frontline workers. They were never there before because we never noticed them. And then we began to say, oh my God, they're really important. And now COVID is gone, and sure, we're gone as well. We just forget. So we have to be reminded. We need to mind our teachers. We need to promote teaching as the most important profession. And we need to mind our nurses, because every single human being will end up at some stage needing medical care and assistance. Like every single human being needs teaching. And that's why they're so important. So it's just we should be demonstrating how important it is and the role. I've seen it myself in prison where education has turned lives around. Amazing. Just amazing. I always tell this little story about Mountjoy and because I got it a long time. I gave it 22 years in Mountjoy, and I suppose it's the last place you'd ever think about, spending any period of time in. And I learned more in Mountjoy than I did anywhere else in my life, by far. In a way, it was my university, because I wasn't ever at university. But I was in Mountjoy, and I learned so much about life. I learned so much about the significance of opportunity. And that links into that heading. Most of us, including myself, take opportunity for granted. Being selected, for instance. God. So we're selected every second minute. And when I'm saying that now, when you're talking to teachers, look, be always very conscious when you're selecting somebody. Honestly, now it's only a small little thing. But I'm telling you, it's a very significant thing when you select somebody. Because I'm going to tell you this amazing little story about a woman in Mountjoy at 26 years of age, drug addicted, fabulous little person, but wrecked with drugs. I suppose just I want to say that to you as well, that because we generalise so much, prisoners, oh Jesus. Prisoners are people. Prisoners are individuals. Every one of them are unique. And there are some amazing and wonderful human beings in prison as prisoners. But life was tough on them. And we forget that. Life can be tough sometimes. Life can be very cruel to some families and some individuals. But Nicola, anyway, was 26. But you're a lovely person, but chronically addicted and Some of you know all about addiction and the struggle and the scourge of it. One of the most horrible things to happen to a human being is to be addicted, believe me. It's a horrendous cross to carry. But we built a new prison, the women's prison called the Docker Centre, and there was an official opening. And one of the things, equality and integration, we said, one of the things was integration, equality. We're all equal. By the way, I used to say it regularly to the prisoners, because sometimes they'd be sort of looking up to you in a way that, and I used to always say to them, listen, I'm just a simple human being like yourself. The only difference between you as a prisoner and me is my job is different. It was only a job. And that's all. That's nothing else. I wasn't superior. But a lot of people feel they're superior. And they're horrible when you think you're superior. Because you're not. You're human. And that's very important. So demonstrating equality is so important. You must do it. And so we were opening, the Minister for Justice at the time, John O'Donoghue, was opening it in September 99, the new women's prison. And we were preparing for it, and we said some of the women prisoners or people who were in prison, by the way, we even stopped calling them prisoners, because that in itself is obnoxious. We actually refer to them as the women, just because of sensitivity around labelling. So we said anyway, we dropped this little statement in consultation with everybody, including the women who were in prison at the time, as we consulted them about the design of the prison as well. Even though another hardliner said, what are you asking them for? Well, I used to say, because they're living here. They're the people who are going to live here. So maybe we should ask them what sort of things would make a difference. So, and by the way, it's also the greatest indicator of respect to ask another human being for his or her opinion. It's a powerful message that you are somebody, you are important. So often the signals we're sending to people are the most powerful. That's the way this little vision statement or mission statement or whatever mission you like to call it, and it was about a community. We are a community of equals. We are striving to. And so it's only 4 little lines and 4 little sentences. And so we said we'll have to invite. And so Kathleen McMahon, who was the governor of the women's prison at the time, said at a meeting, she said, yeah, I'll get someone. So she was going around that day and she met Nicola. We had 8 women down preparing the place. So she said, Nicola, listen, will you read that? And she read it. She said, would you read that on Wednesday at the official opening? And Nicola said, yeah, I will. So off she went. And Kathleen was back in her office in about 10 minutes and she heard a little knock on the door. And she said, yeah, and it was Nicola. So in she comes, and she said, well, she said, I just wanted to ask you, why did you ask me to do this on Wednesday? So Nicola said, or Kathleen said, because you've been down here for the last 8 weeks preparing, you've worked so hard, and we think you deserve the little honour to represent all the women on Wednesday by reading out this just before the minister officially opens the place. But there's her little response I want to share with you. Her little impulsive response. Oh, she said, thank you very much, Mr. McMahon. But do you know something? This is the first time ever in my life that I've been selected for anything. Isn't that amazing? 26. And she could never recall once even being selected. And here we are, regularly being selected. We nearly take it for granted. So little stories and little experiences like that, they've always left a mark with me because they're real. They're real. And it's the little things. It's a little thing. So we say, well, where do you bring that in? See, I'm an absolute believer in human connection, by the way. This is my big one. Anytime I get a chance when I'm with teachers, and sometimes I am asked to go to talk to the staff in a school, and one of the things I always say is, connection is all about connection, not correction. Oh, Jesus Christ, will you shut up, will you? These are the rules. No connection, though. Connection is You know, they say communication is about sharing information, connection is about sharing humanity. And I say that's it. My best example of when I try to highlight and give an example of what really is connection, I say Roy Keane. I say, what? Roy Keane. I said, yeah. Everyone knows Roy Keane at this stage, but I was always a follower of Roy Keane. Not mainly as his football, but I just thought and always felt that he was an amazing human being with tremendous courage and tremendous integrity and all those qualities. But anyway, the reason I want to mention about connection to him is, with him and for you, is that he was interviewed about 2 years ago about his life in Manchester as a player. And the interviewer said to him, and he said, well, you played poorly in the first half, and when you went into the dressing room at half-time, what did Ferguson say to you? And he said, actually, he never opened his mouth to me, ever. And your man was taken aback. He said, what? No, he said, he never opened his mouth. And he said, what happened when you went into the dressing room after playing bad? He said, he just looked at me. And then he said, I knew. He said, I knew I'd let him down. And I said, I'll go out in the second half. That's connection. You don't have to do anything. And in the old I'll always remember I'll tell you, we did West Side Story in Mountjoy many years ago. Pimlico Opera Company in London were given money by an Irishman to come over to put on West Side Story in the prison in Mountjoy. And so they brought a number of professionals with them. And many of the prisoners, men and women, were then involved in West Side Story. Fantastic, by the way. I just wanted to say to you, I'll go back to this story again because I might forget. Just want to say to you that I want to plug the old creative arts. Just want to plug them. If you said to me, what's the greatest connector with people who come from disadvantaged areas and people who have no attachment to the system and who feel the system is against them and who feel alienated, and in many cases they are. If you said to me, what's one of the best? I'd say the creative arts. Drama, music, writing, poetry. Brilliant. It's amazing. In the prison, I could vouch for it. I know more people that were connected through that particular discipline than anything else. And it led on to other areas of education then, like academic education, because it built up confidence. And I'll always say this to you. Never underestimate the importance of confidence. And that's what education does as well. It gives people confidence to put their hand up and to say, I'll have a go. Because confidence, or the lack of it, is a huge inhibitor. It stops some wonderfully skilled people and talented people from progressing because they don't believe in themselves. And that's why the teacher is so important in that field. Building up self-confidence, building up self-belief. But I go back to our West Side Story. The choreographer, she was from London. She was tiny. I'm telling you, she wasn't that height. But she was absolutely brilliant. I used to be fascinated with her inside a Mountjoy male prison. But there was probably about 50 male prisoners involved in West Side Story. Oh, if you saw her in action, she clicked her fingers like, honest to God, they absolutely adored her. They absolutely respected her. She never had to open her mouth. You could have a 6'6" fella going around who's shouting and roaring, and they just ignored him, or worse, told him to get lost. So it is all about, and why was she? Because she was brilliant at what she did, and she was brilliant at communicating. Not on an ego, but simple basic stuff. So it was fascinating to see the dynamics. So, always saying as well, always see, and I'll be saying to you, pass on this all the time as well, you know, the difficult student. You know, so And you see, the problem with the old difficult student is they're labelled, you see. And you know, sometimes if you're saying, you know, what class have you now after dinner? Oh, Jesus Christ. You don't have that fella, do you? Ah. So he's gone before you even go into the room. Listen to me. I bet in your school, if anyone, you all have been in school at some stage, and some of you are still there. But listen, I bet you're a difficult student, and I'd be amazed now, absolutely amazed. There's not one person, one teacher, or one person in that school that person connects with. I'd be amazed. And sometimes we'd be saying, "Are you bribing him or what? You must be giving him something." No, actually, no. I find him great. It's amazing, isn't it? And in Mountjoy, where most of the prisoners dropped out of school, often, most of them at 15, the vast numbers by 16, wasn't it amazing when you got talking to them? There was always one teacher in their lives that they really looked up to and spoke so high about. And it always, the word, by the way, the word in Mountjoy, if you were teaching in Mountjoy, or if you were working in Mountjoy, they'd test you for about 6 months. And they would test you. And eventually they'd decide. And the title you'd get, if you were successful, was, "She's Sound." And when you had that old label in Mountjoy, you could swagger around for the rest of your time. I'm serious. And it was fascinating. Not alone would they respect you, but they'd actually look out for you. And they'd be telling other fellas, "Don't say anything. She's sound." And would you be sound because you were weak? No. Would you be sound because you were cruel? No. You'd be sound because you'd be human. A human being. Amazing. So I'd be saying, you must always see that difficult challenge, or that difficult, troublesome times, parent or students, as a challenge. Always see it as a challenge. How will I be able to manage that fella? And that'll put your thinking cap on, and you'll have to try. But it's amazing the difference if you see it as a challenge, because you'll be constantly saying, "Well, how will I get it to work?" And I'd be always saying, every chance you get, just have a quiet, private word. I mean, my old skill, if I was to say with you, an old private, you see, if you say it in front of the class to him, he'd be very upset. Because you see, they'd be all slagging him. "You're an old softy now, and she loves you." See? You have to do it quietly, when nobody knows. But make sure you say it, and especially if he does anything right. Anything at all. Just one thing right. Because I'm an absolute, total believer in the therapy of praise and encouragement. You say, "Well, what would the main skill I should have as a teacher?" I'd say encourage, 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 with layers of kindness, and not materialistic kindness always. Human kindness, gentleness, positivity. I never met a human being yet in my life that loved criticism. That's amazing. Not one person ever said, "No, I belt away, I don't mind." Isn't that amazing? And the only glimmer and flick of light that I often found with prisoners in Mountjoy was when someday you praised them for something. You could see that little flicker of light, of gratitude, of amazement. Jesus, he's after praising me. Amazing. So kindness. Kindness. Don't ever be miserable with kindness. And sometimes we're just miserable. Kindness is every human being's language. That's if they have language. Because I was going to make another little point too now. Assumptions and beliefs. At my stage in life, what I'm able to say with certainty now is that 99% of my assumptions and beliefs were wrong and are still wrong. And that's great, isn't it? He's from Egypt. I'm just being honest. We know nobody but ourselves, and we don't even know ourselves fully until we experience whatever we experience. Because you don't know how you're going to react. You don't know what you're going to do until you do it. We don't know anybody else. And so assumptions, for instance. And I just want to share this little story with you now. It's another amazing little story. It was after I retired and they asked me to do a little, because I want to share this with you as well, because this is very important as well. I believe that every single human being has a special, unique gift to that person. I believe that fundamentally. Every human being has a special gift. And the sad thing is, many human beings live their whole lives and are never put in touch with that particular gift. Isn't that amazing? There's musicians out there, I'm telling you, geniuses. They don't know they're musicians at all because they never got the opportunity. And that's why education, as it's progressing, is reducing the numbers like that dramatically, and has continued to do that, putting them in touch with their own particular unique gifts. But I'll tell you about the circus anyhow. And this fella came to me, Independent Pictures, and he said, "You're always talking about, every human being has a still and blah, blah, blah." And he said, I'd like to give you a challenge. I said, "What is it?" He said, "We're going to go to Belfast." He said, "to do street circus with 6 boys and girls, 3 boys and 3 girls from the most disadvantaged areas of Dublin. And you're going to get 13 weeks with them on the street, training to be street entertainers." And then he said, "We're going to put on a show on St. Patrick's Day in the parade in Dublin, in the 16th of March. So I said, "Grand." So I went up to the Excel in Ballymun to meet them. And instead of 6, 8 arrived. So I said, "Well, why have we 8? Listen to this, because this is another powerful little thing." I said, "We got 8 because at least 2 will drop out." Oh, I said, "No, they won't." Honestly, from that moment onwards, my only task was, I'll make sure no one drop out on you. Just because I have a reason for saying that now, because it's so easy to write off. And I'm always saying, listen, when they're inside in your classroom, you have some chance. When they're out there, you have no chance. You have no chance if they're out there. But just to finish off then on my little circus. So up we go anyway to Belfast the first day, drive up on a bus into this big theatre cum gymnasium where the shooters were. And he introduced the whole stuff. And just before lunch, he said, "These are trapeze." And one of them said, "Can I go up?" And he lifted her up and she went up. And she did it about 3 minutes. Now imagine being up on a trapeze for the first time and holding herself up for a full 3 minutes. It was amazing. And she did these amazing little things. But when she jumped off, the motivator, Mr. Motivator, went over to her and said, "Jesus," Chantel was her name. I said, "Chantel, you're absolutely brilliant." And you know what she said? "Fuck off, John." And then I noticed every single time she was said, and he was said, "Fuck off." They were the only words she knew. That's how she reacted to everything. And I was saying, just imagine she was going into a job and the boss said to her, "Do this," and she'd fuck up. But I suppose the reason I'm sharing that with you is, you see, vocabulary is huge. How can you express yourself? How can you communicate? How can you live if you haven't vocabulary? So for me, since then, confidence and vocabulary. And we take both so much for granted. So it's just that, just to remember the little things. And final little thing to say to you is, you don't know this, but I'm certain of it. You have helped, you can't change anybody else's life, but you can be a major motivator and leader and facilitator of change. And I'm certain of this. There's hundreds of people out there that you have contributed centrally and very, very significantly to that change. And always remember this, that if you help one child change, You have helped all future generations to change. And that is an amazing achievement. Thanks a million.
I felt very guilty putting up that 5-minute warning sign, so I'm very sorry to have to stop you. John, thank you for, I think, reminding us of what's important in education. And I think we all could take so much from that. I'm sure there are questions. Tricia's ready with her roving mic, so if anybody has some questions or comments or observations they'd like to make, I know John is very happy to chat a bit more.
Hi John, thank you so much. It was such a privilege to get to hear your stories today. I'm really interested to know how you maintained your own hope and your own resilience when you encountered really challenging individuals in, all of your
very simple. Actually, I've always said this, by the way, that, and this is true. I spent 22 years as Governor of Mountjoy, which is a long time, and in some ways a very challenging old job, and in other ways an amazingly exciting and rewarding job. But I can honestly say that I never once ever went in the road in the morning saying, "Oh, good Jesus, have I to go in here today?" And that's part of it. I suppose it's that optimism, and that's a natural thing, by the way. I didn't create it; it's just in me. And I suppose it just happens that I'm that type. So I was always a sort of an optimist, and I suppose the philosophy that I adapted at the very beginning when I started in Mountjoy as governor in 1984 was that I shall show respect to every single person I'll meet, whether he's a prisoner or whether he's a parent or whether he's a member of staff or whether he's a minister or whoever. I'll treat them all the same, but treat them all with respect. And the fascinating thing is that it worked, 100% for me. And I suppose the rewards, you might say the rewards, what are the rewards at the end of the day? And the rewards are that I meet hundreds and hundreds of ex-prisoners now on the streets, anywhere I go, especially Dublin and Cork and Limerick, the big cities or the big urban areas. And it's fascinating because when they see me, every single one of them come over. And their first question is always this, every one of them has the same question: do you remember me? And inevitably my answer is always no. Yeah, and they're always absolutely, I'm sure teachers get it as well sometimes, that someone will come up to you after 15 years and say, "Do you remember me?" I say no, because they're devastated. They say, "But you should remember me." And someone will say, "I was a lunatic, I was up on the roof." And sometimes they say, "And you punished me and you sent me to Cork." But you see, amazing, they're never hostile, they're never disrespectful. They're always delighted to say, "God." And then they say things, this is a share with you, things that you never notice, things that you do naturally with no big deal at all. But to them, it was very significant. And they'd say things like, "You gave me my first break. You were always kind to me. You were always supportive of me." Little tiny things that you would take for granted. But for them as the recipients, it meant so much. So sometimes it's the very small human things that you do by nature that can make such a difference to people. And as I said to you, I bet, you haven't happened to you now, but in years to come, you'll be down in the supermarket someday walking around, maybe even under a walking frame, and someone will come out of nowhere and say, "Oh my God, is that yourself? You were the only person that believed in me. You're the only person that gave me a break. I'll never forget you." That'll pay you. You'll go home. Yeah, the old walker will be gone. So this is that old human stuff that often that we take for granted. So it is about believing. It is about saying, "I can make a difference. I can do something that will make a difference to somebody." It's a privilege to be in that position. It's great to be able to do something that might help somebody else rather than condemning all the time. And so I did see prisoners very much as often social rejects, social misfits, and neglected people in the broader sense. Not forgiving them and not eliminating their wrongdoing, because that's very important as well, that you hold them responsible for their behaviour. But I never ever attached, their person to the behaviour. So you focus on the behaviour, not the person. So for me, even though they committed some horrible crimes, because people often said to me, did you meet many evil people? And I said, I never met one totally evil person, which I didn't. But I met several people who had committed horrendously evil acts. But behind it all, I always found a bit of humanity. Why? Because I was always searching for it. Thanks a million. Thanks a million. Yeah.